讲嘉宾是芬兰拉普兰大学的副教授、艺术与设计学院的副院长，他的姓名是 Maria Huhmarniemi 现在呢，就是因为行程的原因呢，他没有到达现场，所以他为我们特别录制了一个这个视频，大家可以就是观看视频。好，谢谢。
Hello everyone and welcome to listen my talk. My name is Maria Huhmarniemi and I am associate professor in the University of Lapland, located in Finland. I am involved with the Arctic region and I have been developing ways to revitalize some of the crafts, traditions and cultural heritage through art education practices. My background is to be art teacher and artist researcher, and in this presentation I show examples of my own artistic expressions and art installations that have a political content and are rooted in the regional culture. So today I talk about revitalizing the crafts tradition and about the local cultural education. So I am living in the northern Finland in the province of Lapland, and this region is partly belonging to the indigenous peoples here in Finland, Sweden and Norway. Sami people are the indigenous people in Europe. I'm also involved with the international cultures. I'm teaching in the international master's program, and I have many friends who have arrived to Finland from many other countries. And I do think that revitalizing traditions can involve people from many cultural backgrounds. Our global society is multicultural or transcultural in a sense that contemporary culture has influences from many cultural traditions. Anyhow, the Arctic region has a very rich cultural history as well. There has been living many people from many cultural backgrounds also before, and there has been lots of crafts, lots of arts, and some of those traditions are lost. And there is a pressure to revitalize or to support the field of heritage in a ways that globalization wouldn't lead into just one kind of culture. So many people are afraid that the heritage is lost due to the globalization. And in my talk today, I consider that how can we revitalize the heritage in a ways that it is all the time transforming itself, in a ways that we don't want to put heritage only into the museum or think that it could not change. The heritage can change to face the contemporary needs and our contemporary society. But some of the elements of it could be present in our contemporary life so that we ourselves feel connected to our history, our roots, our traditions that can be regional or that can have connections also to other cultures. And many of my artworks have some political content because I use art to participate into societal discussions, to the discussions on cultural politics, what kind of arts should be supported through the politics, as well as environmental politics. here in the Arctic and in the Lapland in Finland, many of the natural resources are taken for the global needs. So the Arctic is often seen as a field where natural resources can be taken away. And I aim to explain how the Arctic is also home for cultures, home for peoples. Our land is not empty. It is home for our cultures. First example that I'm showing today is my own installation, and I am mainly showing artworks that I have made myself because of the copyrights of the artists. I would like to show artworks by other artists as well, but for video talk it's easier to show one's own artworks. And I have been transforming the traditional culture of making decoration into contemporary art and into political art. So the example is called himmeli, and himmeli is a symmetric decoration made of straw, and here in Finland rye straw. Rye is used a lot for making bread, and this straw was collected for the decorations. And this decoration is often used at Christmas time on the top of a dining table. And it has had cultural meanings. It has been maybe hoping a good luck for next year, or it's been a kind of way to lift the atmosphere on a more spiritual or festival season. And in my artistic practice, I have then made new forms and new expressions through the traditional technique. So I have expanded the traditional form into more to very wild forms. I experimented with plastic drinking straws and with many colors. And also the content of the artwork changed. So while it used to be used as a decoration, I expressed the political statement through the artwork. When I started to make these sculptures, there was a political party in Finland that demanded arts to be national. So the True Finns party, that is a right-wing conservative party in Finland, stated that the government should support only arts that is built on national heritage and to the aims of underlying what Finnish culture is. And they didn't want to support postmodern experiments, for example. And my artwork also continues the Finnish heritage, but I underline the cross-cultural background of it. So this kind of decoration is not based on Finnish culture only. It's developed through cultural exchange. People have always learned from other cultures across the borders. And this can be seen in himmeli with the name of it. Himmeli, as a name of the decoration, is not rooted in Finnish language. It is on the German and Swedish language. And in my artworks I played with the name of it to underline the fact that something that we consider very Finnish is actually rooted in transcultural exchange between Finnish culture and other cultures in Europe. And this political statement was one way of revitalizing the heritage into the contemporary needs, into the discussions of talking what kind of arts and culture we hope to support in Finland. And my statement was that we need cultural exchange. I am interested of working with various participants and community groups. In this photo, I'm working with the people in the village, and there is 3 generations around my kitchen table. And crafts making and art education through crafts heritage is one way of bringing generations together. Often it's so that the older generation are the knowledge holders of the tradition, as well as masters of the techniques and masters of the silent knowledge continued through crafts tradition. And sharing these skills and sharing the knowledge with the younger generation is very valuable. On the other hand, often the younger generation are the ones who are the future generations of our societies. And the dialogues between the generations can be very important. And making crafts is one way of creating space for encounters and for dialogues. When people gather together and use their bodies and senses for craft making, they are more open for staying in a dialogue. You can be silent, you can think of your views, and you can share them in a safe space when making crafts.
Regional art education can also be cross-cultural when based on crafting. People who migrate from different parts of the world have often some similarities in their crafting cultures. There can be something that is typical to a place, typical to a region or country, but often also some similarities. Knitting, crocheting, making embroidery. They can be ways of art making that people are actually familiar with, and ways of teaching of one's own culture to the others is one way of supporting two-way integration of immigrants into new regions. Local culture and the culture based on nature and being with nature can be shared with people who arrive in Lapland. And we have developed the methods together with the ones who stay here and settle here, as well as in the tourism activities with the visitors in Lapland.
Another example of revitalizing crafts heritage is example of string art. So string art is also a tradition practiced in many countries and in many cultures. And in Finland we have had quite simple decorations of string art, often on a black plywood board with the thin yarn. And the common topics of the string art pictures have been, for example, flowers or non-figurative symbols. And together with my colleague Elina Härkönen, we have made contemporary string art pictures with hand-dyed wool yarn. So the way of having the colors in the wool has been at the core of our expression. And the colors of the wool are now based on plants and mushrooms. So we have revitalized also the way of coloring your own wool, dyeing your own wool. And I'm interested in revitalizing the ways of using wool, Finnish sheep wool, because of the sustainability, cultural sustainability, ecological sustainability, and the continuation of our knowledge of the processes of harvesting plants and mushrooms for purpose of making crafts with it. Knowledge that is carried along the crafts tradition have dimensions of local cultures related to nature here in the Arctic. So our culture is very strongly based on living together with the forest or with mushrooms and plants. And this kind of knowledge we call northern knowledge in this region. But similar knowledge can be found, of course, in many other cultures where people live close to nature. And when revitalizing the crafts heritage, we are also revitalizing the ways of knowing and the local or the regional or the northern knowledge. Ways of collaborating with elements from the nature, collaborating with the mushrooms, collaborating with plants, collaborating with wool yarn. And the regional and local art education can be a way of staying connected with the knowledge of the locals, of the generations that have lived in the same regions for longer. And I do think that this knowledge can be exchanged with newcomers and further developed with the people who migrate to the new regions. So revitalizing processes here in Lapland and among the students and doctoral researchers in the University of Lapland has involved students and researchers who have arrived from many different cultures, some from the Arctic, some from Asia. People have moved to Lapland and learned our traditions or our ways of living close to nature and collaborating with elements of the nature.
Here in Lapland and in the Arctic region in general, art, crafts and design has not been separated from each other's traditionally. And all of these expressions, crafting and making signs and symbols as we understand in art, have been part of a lifestyle. So you have been collecting your materials from the nature and you have been making designs and art to clothes that you wear and so on. And the view of art in the art museums and crafts as their own discipline is very Western. And the Arctic art is does want to make a difference to the Western view of art that we do see as colonial. And the art education practice at the moment here in the University of Lapland aims to decolonize view of art and bring it back to the more integrated into way of life and nature culture. And I show now one example where we have been decolonizing art into being related to human and nature relations. For example, humans' dialogues with trees, stones and other elements of nature. So I collaborated with Francis Joy, and I have been practicing this also with some other artists and educators, and we have been supporting art students' relations with trees and dialogues with trees, and practice arts as an experience in a forest. Forest is an important environment for people in Finland and people in the Arctic. It is seen as a place to relax and place to find your well-being and inner balance. And on everyday life, it can anyhow happen that people lose the ways of being connected with other elements of nature, and art education can support the connectedness with elements of nature. In these workshops, drum was used as a way to connect with nature and with oneself, and environmental art was carried out as a kind of meditative way of being in nature. And visual arts was used as a way to reflect one's experience. And this kind of workshops we have carried with art students, but also with the locals living in the villages. And the experience has been positive for the participants. After the art education practice, I have reflected the experience myself in my installation art, and I created, together with some of the participants, guidelines for encountering trees and sentences that aim to support people's dialogue or bodily interaction with trees. And these guidelines have been shown in the installation in the art museum. They have been as a poster on a wall, but also as a cards that the visitors of exhibition could have with them and put into their pockets and go to the forest with the guideline. I have also been making craft-based installation representing the forest relations as well as the conflicts around the forest issues here in Finland. We have a large-scale forest industry, so trees are cut down and they are used for making toilet paper and transported away from Finland. And many people feel sorrow for losing the forest and trees important to them, especially when major forest is cut down. Old trees are something that people really connect with and find important. Old forests and major trees are important also for nature's own sake. The biodiversity of nature in Finland is at risk because of massive forest industry. Regional and local art education can tackle the issues that are important for locals. So getting together to make art is a forum also to talk of topical issues, political issues, issues of one's own values and hopes and worries. So art education is a way of getting people together and making discussions possible. Revitalizing traditional craft has been at the core of my artistic practice. But we can also look at it even a bit wider of course, revitalizing the ways of knowing, but also culture in a wider sense. And winter culture has been one great focus in our work in the University of Lapland. When before people used to be a lot outdoors in winter, there were some ways of life and annual elements of the culture that repeated year to year. For example, that you would go ice fishing. And when nowadays people work more inside and in the office, the culture is changing together with the climate change. There is very fast changes in the Arctic nature when Arctic is warming fast, very fast. Changes in nature impact on culture, and they also impact on people's views on themselves, because people's identity is based on being with nature. So climate change changes culture and people's views on themselves and their own culture. And winter art, snow and ice sculpting, has been developed in one sense also to continue the ways of being in nature, being with winter, interacting with snow and ice, finding well-being from it, but also in sense of transforming winter culture into the contemporary needs and contemporary ways of life. So we have been doing snow and ice sculpting and snow and ice architecture together with people in the villages or at schools, or also with the tourism companies when there is snow hotels and ice hotels. Snow and ice sculpting has been made with the locals. Today I have talked about revitalizing heritage, craft heritage, ways of knowing, and culture, especially culture that is part of living with nature and close to nature. And I have also referred to Arctic art, and to summarize what Arctic art means, we use this concept to talk about indigenous art and other than indigenous art here in the Arctic, as well as the blendings of indigenous cultural elements and other forms of culture, for example the ones learned by the immigrants or other newcomers in the Arctic. And Arctic art is at the nexus of life, process and product. So it is not so important to think that how art would be different to other life, or that it would be needed to put into an institution. Arctic art is part of the life, and it is interwoven into daily ways of being in nature and part of the community member here. And Arctic art can refer to contemporary art, design, craft, events, films, snow and ice, sculpting, winter art. And it is often for the sustainability here in the Arctic. And this field is discussed and presented, and artists work with the topics of the Arctic to draw attention to Arctic issues. And as a concept, the Arctic art is activist itself and also culture politically charged, that there is this special attention for the Arctic issues, global warming, natural resource extraction, and so on. I am teaching in the University of Lapland, and we have a master's degree program where artists and designers are welcome to come to study. We study a lot about sustainability, ecological sustainability, social issues, cultural sustainability, and the focus of the studies is in the communities and in the collaborations, creative collaborations. I have been publishing lots of research articles together with my colleagues in the University of Lapland and in other universities. So please, if you want to learn more about revitalizing crafts heritage or working as art educator in remote locations or collaborating with tourism sector or schools or villages or environmental conflicts, feel free to learn more from the published articles. Thank you very much for listening to me today. I hope that you have a great conference, and I hope that one day I will also be participating in the location. Thank you.
好，感